Uno.
So it's like, you can really tell something's happening when you're watching like CBS News and Walter Cronkite brings out the map. You know the map? We have the whole country and then each like area and circles, Madison, SF State, Berkeley, Penn State, you know. And you know what's happening? Every fucking kid in the country is watching television saying, I want my campus there. I haven't seen UCLA there very recently, so I mean, you've got a lot of work to do. Everyone's looking and saying, I want my campus there. That's why they've got to control the media. To stop the revolution, well, they're not going to stop it, but to slow it down, they have to do two things. One is rewrite the history books, and two is control the media. Because they got to stop the idea, because the idea is the conspiracy. Because a lot of the things we learned when we were very young are the things we're applying right now. You know, the whole revolutionary idea. You know, Declaration of Independence, Jefferson, country has to have a revolution every 30 years. I read that, I said, yeah, I agree with that. And I've been thinking of having that's engraved in my skin the rest of my life. Every 30 years a revolution. We're way overdue in this country. We're making up for lost time. Just carrying out Jefferson's old ideas. And the underdog, and then this whole thing about people are free, right? People are free and so forth. And then you leave school and look around the streets and you see no signs of freedom. Where's the freedom? You know, like I know, when I was young, I grew up in the Midwest, Cincinnati.
Stop.
And even the revolution's coming there. And if you can believe it, really. You can always tell in a place like that how quick it's spreading. My parents would say everybody's free and so forth and equal. And then I would like walk around and go into the black community. And I'd see a difference. I was curious. Kids are curious. Babies are beautiful. They're curious. So I asked my father, what's happening? What's the difference? What's happening? And well, when you ask that question, the most typical reaction is, shh. Because that's a question you don't ask, right? That's a why question. America, you don't ask why questions. You ask how do you do it? You know, you don't ask why. But kids, I was very stubborn. I kept pressing, and finally it's like they don't work hard enough. You hear that? They don't work hard enough, which made no sense to me. I mean, I say, well, who's this woman who comes once a week into our house? She don't work hard enough? So I mean, it's right there in your own home, isn't it? You don't have to go anywhere else. You can stay in your own fucking home and see the history of America. Right there in your own home. The hypocrisy, you know, the
Partito.
fucked upness, the word.
UCLA 2.
So I mean, they have to rewrite the history books. Hitler had to rewrite the history books, didn't he? Hitler had to finally go back and rewrite the history books. Because you got to get out of the heads of the kids those ideas. So he rewrote them. Then they're going to have to control the media. Take Chicago. See, people come up and say, oh, Chicago was terrible, it was awful, it was terrible. That's bullshit. It really is bullshit. Here I think we ought to have a little sympathy for Daley. A little bit. Chicago is no different than any other place. You think Daley's any different than the mayor of this city or Detroit or any other city or the police department's any different? Ain't no difference. Listen, Chicago in August of 1968 was America, that's all. But you happen to know about it because it was on television in your living room. So you know about it. It was the sports event for the week. The Yippies versus the cops, so you all know about it. But there was nothing unusual about that. That was like Vietnam is America. Mississippi is America. It's just, you know, you can understand Detroit, you understand Los Angeles by looking at Vietnam. And you can understand Chicago by looking at Chicago. What happened in Chicago was not unusual. I mean, not at all. And what it did was it exposed it. And why did it expose it? It exposed it because Walter Cronkite went on television and said it's a police state. Then about 2 nights later, he kissed Daley's ass. You saw that miserable, ugly show. I mean, he kissed his fucking ass. Daley's ass on TV. You see him talking? You know, Daley says, Walter, you just did not know the secret reports that we had of the planned assassinations of all the political leaders. And if you had this information, you would have done the same things that we would have done, Walter. And Walter says, yes. This undercover cop Pearson, you know, he writes this article in Official Detective Stories. Dig this article, really. There's the biography of a cop, Official Detective Stories. And he says that they heard 4 months before the convention that the Yippies had plans to murder Daley, Humphrey, McCarthy. Well, how come you didn't arrest anybody? Plans. Plans is a serious word. A plan is a plan. Not ambitions, romances, you know, and so forth. But plans. No one was arrested. So Chicago was typical. We knew, see, I called it a police riot before it happened because I knew the theater, you know, and I knew that was going to happen. And our whole idea was that the cops tear gas us, they're also going to tear gas Hubert Humphrey. And they did tear gas Hubert Humphrey. Hubert Humphrey, he said, you know, one day the tear gas floated up into his room, like it was up there, and he a shower to get tear gas, you know. And you think that the cops broke into Eugene McCarthy's office, political headquarters? They broke into his office, beat people, arrested people, and searched it? Eugene McCarthy? I mean, to what depths do the American people go to accept something? You know? I mean, I remember I got back in New York and I picked it up and it said, cops raid McCarthy headquarters. I was really positive that I'd go to sleep and wake up the next day and pick up the paper and say, cops raid Humphrey headquarters. You know? Really, I mean, McCarthy accepted it. Man, I don't get McCarthy. He really, very disappointing. Well, I didn't expect anything, but I mean, shit. I mean, you know, he had to have a ticket to get into the convention. I think he won the primaries. It's absurd, absurd. The cops raided McCarthy headquarters. And so the media only got excited when media people got hurt, right? When media people got hurt, came a tragedy. A yippee got killed in Chicago. You never heard about it. 2 days before the Democratic Convention began, a fellow from Sioux City, Iowa was gunned down in the streets of Chicago by a Chicago pig. And it never got any report except in the underground press. They kept that fucking thing quiet, you see. It was really beautiful because during that whole week there was a black guy who stood at the spot where the guy had been killed. And it was a very busy thoroughfare, and he marked it with the red something, and just stood there and just kept saying over and over again, that's the spot that he gave the guy's name, was killed, that's the spot. And I just watched people walk by. What's this? Just walking by. You know, it was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. But they killed the guy, and they beat, you know, I don't have to go through all the things they did. They do it every day in the ghettos, and they're doing it every day on the campuses. But the media got hurt, you know. A guy gets killed, but a media guy gets his finger nicked, and it's an international issue. You know, international. Well, Mike Wallace gets roughed up a little bit. Gets a little brushed up a little bit. And, oh, the police is screaming on. Well, I'm glad at least. At least that's good. At least when they start acting in their own interest, that's at least a point for them. But you know, it's always like when you watch the Vietnam coverage. You know, you watch Vietnam coverage every night, 5 minutes, and all the bodies and the bodies. Then finally a guy with a tape recorder from CBS gets injured. And Walter Cronkite, I started crying. He worked for 6 years. 6 years in Vietnam covering, you know. What about all the bodies we just saw on fucking television dead? But they're brown, they're Vietnam, they don't count. Okay, so that's why we heard about the violence in Chicago, because the media got its own fingers caught. So that's why they heard about the violence. And that's why they got to control the media. They got to control the media because they got to keep these things quiet. Daley would have succeeded in Chicago. He'd have been a hero, total hero, if the word had not gotten out. People didn't have to explain. See, he cost Humphrey the election because the word got out. So they got to control that media. And that's the same thing here. The media is spreading the idea. Television is hastening the revolution by years. You know, what would happen in 100 years is going to happen in 10 years because the communication is going so quickly. You know, Berkeley happens, and across the country, generation has changed. In 1959, I was a 21-year-old newspaper.
Partito secondo, rally, UCLA.
It's an economic problem down deep. The country's like totally developed and built, right? Its economy is structured, and its economy is crazy. It's totally irrational. The advertising, they got to create needs so you keep the money flowing. You know, they got to artificially create needs. So you turn on television at prime time, and what's the biggest issue? You know. Right, if only your breath, you know, or underarm deodorant. The raving issues of the 20th century in America, you know, deodorant and hair slicked down to, you know. But that's how they're making money. That's how they make money these days. You know, insane things like that, right? That's where the economy's at. You don't think they can build a car that'll last 15 years? Capitalism, which can go here and go there, builders can't build a car. They build products so that the products will break. So the advertising will make you buy new ones to keep the fucking money going in and out. The whole consumer sickness keeps this economy going, you know? And they need the existence of a military economy to keep the whole thing going. It's totally irrational because young whites and young blacks are not needed. We're useless. We're excess, right? There is no place for us in the economy. Take blacks, right? Blacks built this country, right? Blacks picked the cotton, built the country. Now they're not needed. Well, work's over. No, you're not needed. They got to figure out a way. And the biggest problem that faces America are the existence of young black kids walking the streets. What are they going to do with it? That's why law and order is the biggest issue in the country, because law and order mainly, exclusively means how to control blacks. That's what law and order means, and long hairs.
Yeah.
So they got this problem. Like any big power, how do they solve the problem? The foreign peril at our shores. We got to stop the foreign peril. So they draft the blacks to fight the yellows to protect the whites at home. If I told you that's what it was like in Mars, you wouldn't believe it. You know what's like in Mars? White people draft black people to fight yellow people. No, you wouldn't believe it. It happens in the United States.
Partito.
The way the society
UCLA 4.
exists, pure and simple, is by dividing us. The moment that we are no longer divided, this society is dead. That's why they're so afraid of black power, yippie power, student, whatever it is. Because the way the society controls is by dividing us, by dividing the blacks, by dividing the long hairs, by dividing the Vietnamese, and getting people to fight against one another, right? And that's what capitalism really is. Oh, a little place for you here, and a little place for you here, and you compete here, and you compete here. In school, that's what they do in school, right? Everybody is working for his own grades, competing against one another for diplomas and a place here and a place there. And so students don't see one another as brothers, in which everyone's development equals another person's development. It's a family, but they see each other as competitive. I know when I was in school, I was always hoping I got a good grade. I hope he did. I did better. I feel good. I did better. I mean, I knew that I was losing my fucking soul in the process.
Oh yeah.
So they destroy your fucking soul, but that's the way they do it. And it's only in the movement, when people are getting together and struggling and becoming a unity, that people are discovering brotherhood, love, what life is all about, and seeing that our similarities are the only thing we got, because all we got is one another. We don't have anyone else, right?
Yeah.
But that's what the society needs, is divide, right? And so for blacks, Vietnam, counterinsurgency, making all these plans, Now what are they going to do about white people? Young whites, young middle-class whites, come out of the suburbs, what, I got a problem, So they got the solution, schools. Beautiful, perfect solution. The way to get rid of whites is school. They'll go to school. So schools become babysitting agencies. Babysitting agencies. I mean, like, you take a baby. A baby is so fucking curious and interested and alive and wants to know everything. And they got to figure out a way how to kill that curiosity. How are you going to kill that curiosity? Because if that curiosity were alive, nobody would stay in school. Because the last place for a curious person is school. That's the last place for a curious person, right? So you got to figure out a way to kill that curiosity. How? Okay, school is compulsory. So for a young kid, you take a young kid full of energy and say, you got to go to school. It's compulsory. And when something's compulsory, there's no life in it. There's no energy in it. There's no love in it. They take the love out of it and make it compulsory. See, one of the yippie, what's your program, they ask, one of the yippie platforms is grade school and high school should be voluntary.
Yeah.
Let the schools compete for the energy and time of the kids. I would like right now to have a whole sacket full of diplomas and to go around to every person here and give you a bona fide diploma, what you're working for. If you're working for a doctor, they give you a doctorate. Working for a BA, a BA. I mean, a real one that you can cash in at the local 5 and 10. One that you can take to American Airlines and fly with to New York, or you can do whatever you want. Well, I'd like to give it to you. Or if you're in the scene for money, they give you the money, and then see how many of you come to school tomorrow. I really wonder. Habit is a big thing, so a few will come out of habit. What else is there to do? 9 o'clock, I gotta go. My motor's running. So a lot of people come out of habit. That makes some sense. Man, I would learn that in psychology. Man is a habit-formed animal. But the thing is that I would predict that there would be a real population shortage after a while on most campuses, that people would prefer to do other things more relevant, that the schools would just be deserted. Because, the schools are babysitting agencies, and what they got to get into your head is the idea that you're working for an external thing, like you're working for a degree, or you're working for a grade, or working for an honor, whatever, you're working for something external. I mean, that's what capitalism is. I can't pronounce it. Capitalism is that you work for a paycheck or something like that. Like I didn't see, the way I got radical is I went to work on a newspaper when I was about 21, and I was really, I saw all the movies, and I was chasing after fire engines, and I really believed in the reporter myth, and I arrived on the paper, you know, I said, let's go, this is exciting, let's go, you know, we're all Clark Kent, Superman, the whole thing, and everybody is bored on the paper, totally, completely, totally frustrated and bored, and I'm, you know, I can't figure it out. 4 o'clock, the elevators just fill with people going home. 8 to 4 day, or 3:30, people just deserting. I forgot the news doesn't stop at 4 o'clock. A lot of murders take place at 5 p.m. Well, what's happening? And so like, there was one view that's open to me, that it's open to all of us, and a lot of people buy it up, and that's the tragic view of life. Man is an evil animal, and man's lot is a struggle, and man does not enjoy what he does, and it's all hurly-burly, and, you know, and tragic view. And so I said, okay, I'll open myself up to the tragic view. But then I started like meeting all the reporters and going to lunch with them, and I figured something out. In every single one of them, there was like a dream that had been destroyed, that had been a wild animal that had been caged, a life that had been denied. And they'd all had this, you know, somewhere along the line, they had stopped dreaming, and they had started accepting the shit. And I said to myself, damn, that's not gonna happen to me. I don't care what happens. But that ain't gonna happen to me. And then, because that's America, right? Got to get you to stop dreaming, you know? Got to control your dreams, because that'll cut off the supply for the revolution, which is primarily based on dreams. So, I became totally convinced that what was responsible was not the people themselves, but the box that they were in. And then I said, I figured I became a Marxist overnight. The thing is owned by one guy who appoints the editor and the city editor, and everyone else just works for a living. And you know, it's simple social psychology. You know, you learn it, you know, when you're born. Everyone wants to feel part of something. If you're not part of something, you don't dig it. You don't enjoy it. You know. So it's very simple. So I started going around saying, hey, this thing ought to be a commune. This is a big Scripps Howard paper. Go to the LA Times and say, hey, this thing ought to be a commune. Well, we all ought to get together and make the decisions and elect the city editor and elect the editor and share the money. Share it equally. People look up at me and say, you're a communist. I say, what? They say, you're a communist. I said, well, you know, kids are stubborn, so I said, okay, I'm a communist. So what? I mean, you know, fuck it. You know, you're Jewish, you know. I'm not Jewish. So, finally, I just had to quit. You know, because the whole dropout message, one individual cannot reform a structure. I mean, there are a lot of students going to this building, these campuses, and a lot of campuses saying, I am going to change it. I'm going to reform the sociology department. I'm going to reform this or reform that. Well, I mean, it's impossible, but try. But you offer your own honesty, set a time limit on it. Not 10 years. You ought to say like 6 months. If in 6 months I don't have concrete improvements that I can point to, then really maybe I'm being swallowed up and I'm not swallowing them up. I mean, really, like 6 months. Because you can't reform the SS, the Army. You can't reform these things. You can destroy them from within. You can demoralize and eat them away, but you can't destroy. You can't. There's only one example that I can think of working from within that's effective, and that is that if I'm ever called for jury duty, you know, if I'm ever called for jury duty, I'm going to say that I love cops and I think the law came from Moses to the heavens and right down through the Congress, and every law has got the sacred touch of God on it. And I'm gonna, and I'll convict everybody. Then I'm gonna sit in the corner and just go to sleep. And then as soon as we get in that jury room, I'm gonna say acquittal. That's all. Man, I hope there's somebody like that in Sirhan's jury. I don't hear much applause for that.
Yeah.
That's the only example of working from within that I can think of, is that kind of thing, you know, because it's got a short time period. But a lot of the students working from within are just jiving themselves, and you know, the whole type scene. So they got to make you work for some external thing, and that like kills your excitement, your interest. Schools kill learning, destroy learning. People say the yippies are anti-intellectual. Well, I think this is a very intellectual rap I'm giving. You know, it's got an intellectual wave through it, in my own way. You know, it's got its academic roots. You know, I read some books. I prefer movies. I mean, you know, I'm not against learning, but I never learned a thing in the library. I have to say that. I mean, open up a book, sit on my ass for 6 hours, reading. It meant nothing. It was fucking words. Just. But when I went out and had an experience that I could then relate to the words, then life meant something, right? So
Yeah.
So what they've done here is they created this artificial environment. In a university and a high school in America are artificial environments in which they want to keep the world out. They really do. They want to keep the world out. You can't keep the world out. Ain't gonna work. We're coming. The natives are coming, man. The natives are at the door, man. The barbarians are gonna tear these walls down. That's all there is to it. You cannot keep the world out, which is what they're trying to do. And that's why there's a lot of anti-intellectualism in America. The working guy is suspicious and doesn't like the professor. I can see something to that, you know? If it was a choice, I would rather have the Hells Angels on my side than the faculty at Columbia University. I want a signature for my ad, and they go to professors and so forth. I mean, what is it, you know? They have the idea that you know, some people have the idea that you're walking down the street and you think in your head, oh, the Vietnam War is bad. Something happens out there in the world because you thought in your head. Then nothing happens. Only when you take action, something happens. I don't care what's in your fucking head. I want to know what you're doing. Then when you're doing, then I understand what's in your head. I understand what's in your head by watching what you're doing, right? If you're not doing nothing but being in school, then I don't care if you're a Stone, Marxist, Leninist, nihilist, Bakuninite, everything, you know, Maoist, the whole works. What are you doing, you know? Because they got this idea, that, you know, all these academic Marxists, they got this idea that if you think, you know, if your head says that you are ideologically radical, then you're doing something. Bullshit, not. They want you here. Yeah. Stay here and debate racism. Have big debates about racism. Have big debates about revolution, you know. Form parties. Get up and say, oh, socialism and all that shit. Just keep it on the verbal level. Everything in school's got to be kept to the verbal level. Because the moment you take any action, you're going to be flying out of here on your ass. As long as you are a legitimate card-carrying student, you are suspicious. Because I'm wondering what you were doing to keep that card, you know? You are not stepping on someone's toes. Take that for double negative, you know? If you're a card-carrying student, you are safe. That's right. Because they don't let you keep that card if you start doing something, if you start projecting your ideas into some reality, into some action, right? So these schools are preparing us psychologically to accept the shit out there. Preparing us to accept capitalism. You know, it's like Vietnam. The planes fly over North and South Vietnam and they bomb, And I'm thinking to myself, now what is there about a guy who'll do that, right? And it's simple. I can understand that by walking into any class at any university.
Yep.
Because they have taught us to separate emotion from activity. Emotion from activity. School is busy work. I gotta do my homework. Do we have to know this for the exam? Remember that? Do we have to know the exam? Man, I'm telling you, it's just like we're doing the teacher a favor, you know? It's like, so they have prepared us in grade school and high school to separate emotion from activity. And then a guy, you know, can very easily fly over North Vietnam, drop bombs. He's just doing his job. The Eichmann thing, America's Eichmann. You know, they always tell us about World War II, but we know less than World War II. That's why we're against the Vietnam War. The people that are against the Vietnam War and the people that are against the white racists know the lesson of World War II. Our parents didn't learn the lesson of World War II. Because they're talking about, the lesson of World War II was a guy just doing his job and not defending himself. And you stop anybody in America and ask him what he's doing, and he'll always get back to the thing, I'm just doing my job. That's all it is. No defense. I mean, you know, we don't have any brave heroes anymore, military heroes. Gary Powers is the American soldier. Remember Gary Powers?
Yeah.
Oh, I guess I just, I don't know how I got to Russia. I guess I just got an accident, you know. I'm sorry. You know, or Lloyd Booker. You thinking of Lloyd Booker? Well, that's the example. You don't have any guy who stands up and says, I will die for America. Yeah, you got Viet Cong that'll do that. You got Yippies that'll do that. You got Black Panthers that'll do that. But you don't have any American soldiers that'll do that. A few. You know, but that's not the American Army, and that's not the cop. That's why we're going to win, you see? Because we're willing to die, because we're in it with our lives, right? We're not doing it as a job. There's no job, you know? None of us are in the movement as a job, you know? If it is, it's poor wages and everything. High risk. A lot of fun, though. So in that sense, it is work. So you start breaking down all these distinctions. Work, play, religion, this, that. You know, in school, they take a baby and they got to get all these distinctions. 8 to 5 is work, and then you come play, and then Sunday you go to church. I mean, it's like your head is a file cabinet. what files do I pull out, and so forth. So we're trying to knock up all these files and make it all one. They do it in school, sociology, political science, biology, you got all the different subjects, you know, different book for each subject. I mean, I had to quit school, I couldn't remember the differences between the subjects, you know, an hour class and so forth. The bell rings, that's freedom. That's how I learned out what freedom was. What is freedom? When the bell rings and class is over, that's that feeling I get is freedom. That's the freedom I want to have everywhere, you know. To divide our mind up, fuck up our heads in school that way, and they prepare us to do these kind of tasks that have no emotion in them, that have no morality in them, that have no meaning in them. They're teaching us to be machines. In a machine society, they're teaching us to be machines. And you can dig at the environment. It's right there in the environment. This environment is an environment for machines. That's simple. The classroom is a sterile, you know, bullshit place, you know? I mean, like, we're just like the rats in psychology, all these rats that use things. We're just rats. Rats on one side, rats on the other side. You know, the program should be free the fucking rats. It's like, you know, well, look, I'll give you one example. See, I think that the school system is going to break down because of these things. Because, like, I'm really, you know, it's really weird, because I'm talking about my experience in high school, which was like 12 years ago. But I went out to Long Island a few weeks ago, spoke to about 500 young high school kids, you know. And I started wrapping all this down about, you know, separate bathrooms for the faculty and the students, and the little thin roast beef sandwiches you get for food. It's all about food, isn't it? They're killing our stomachs in high school. Remember that food they gave you in high school? Huh? They can show what they think of they show what they think of the youth by putting that shit in your stomach. So I wrapped this down to Long Island to about 200 high school kids. God, man, everyone just right with it. It was like I was talking about 15 years ago in this day, you know? Saying something like, you know, the freest place in a high school is the jar. That's the only place where you're free. You can do whatever you want to do, get high, whatever it is, you know? The classrooms aren't free. So the schools are just going to break down, just totally break down. We went into a class at Berkeley. This was a psychology class on thinking. Thinking. No. What happens at 1 o'clock? People stay or leave?
Stay.
Okay. Everyone should stay. Yeah. Because we want to have a discussion, too. I'm wrapping up, sort of. Like Fidel, I'm wrapping up. 2 more hours, wrapping up. So we went into this class on thinking. There were about 200 people in the class, and the professor was like diagramming on the blackboard. He's diagramming away. He was like, he walked in, he said good morning, and the girl next to me wrote down good morning. You never know, he may ask it on the exam. You gotta be prepared about everything, you know, because that's what school is, being prepared and learning. School is like Las Vegas. You gotta learn that secret, the gambling secret. And so when I was in high school, I never got good grades. I was a C student, good C student. I used to get A's when I liked and D's when I didn't like, because I was not willing to undergo that kind of particular kind of discipline that a guy who gets good grades gets. You got it's sort of a secretarial mind. You got to learn exactly what to learn, not too much, just not know what book not to read, where to cut that point off, and then diagram it really well. And then when you're asked that question, just get it right out there, really organized, and not be too creative or too brilliant or too exciting. Just get it real right. Send it back as a frozen food product. So, so he's up there diagramming away on the wall about psychology, and to me it looks like a big problem in mathematics, but it's thinking, and everyone's there taking notes. I couldn't understand this place. So we sat, there was 4 of us, and we sat in the middle, and we took off our shirts. Reaction, no reaction. You know, there's not much reaction of a lot of things in classes because people are so dead. They're so dead, they've turned themselves off, they're so dead to experience that they wouldn't react if a bomb exploded in the middle of the fucking room, they wouldn't notice, you know? Someone would come in and say that the hydrogen bomb was dropped on New York. We've got to finish for the exam in 10 minutes. There at 4 o'clock. So then we started smoking marijuana, and about 3 or 4 joints, and I thought the aroma had captured the room. That was my sense of the thing. But no one else's, because no one said, "Can I have a puff?" No one even seemed to notice. And there were some long hairs in the room, but you can't tell about long hair. You know, long hair also can be a disguise. You know, there's a lot of short hairs hiding under that long hair. You know, and long hair don't make you revolutionary by itself, nor does having an SDS card. You know, it's what you're doing. But so I saw the long hairs, but you know, I know the long hair type too that come up to you and say, well, you know, I'm working in my own way, you know, carrying my, you know, disgusting. You're a traitor to your hair. That was original. So, no one noticed the pot. I guess the human body is a strange thing because you only smell what you expect to smell. You're very, like, trained. And then we started kissing. French kissing, real heavy, and going on and on. And just picture this thing, the classroom, the noting. The professor is noticing. He's noticing. But he's got 45 minutes of material to cover, and nor hurricane, nor hell, nor high water is going to stop him from covering that material. He's got to cover in that hour. And then finally some girl spoke up and said, "With people in the middle making a disturbance, please stop." And one of us shouted out, "This is a class on thinking, and we're thinking." You cannot separate thinking from loving, thinking from kissing. This is the laboratory part of the room. You can't separate it. You know, we're thinking. And then the professor said a very sad thing, but very typical. I think you find this typical of most professors. He looked at us and said, in my class, I do the teaching. Dig that? In my class, I do the teaching. So he's a cop. Professor's a cop, right? You know, he makes the rules in his class. In the Law and Order, he makes the rules, right? In my class, I do. Professors have that idea, that in their class, they do the teaching and you do the learning, you know? That's it, you know? Scratch your professor, man, and you find a blue cop suit right there, right? You do, man. I don't respect professors. So, I mean, it was crushing, but it was theater. It was theater because there it was for everybody to see. That's a perfect example of guerrilla theater, right? There it was, boom. He had to lay down the rule of law, you know, to control the activity and the chaos by means of electronic surveillance. Huh? The quotes? I mean, what they have? Oh, no, that's secret. Government secrets. I mean, you know, probably half the people in the country are spying on the other half. You know, the Civil War has already begun. You just aren't aware of it. The Civil War's begun. You're all in the records. You're all in the files. You know? They got you all, right? They know.
Aimed against blacks, right? Because they got the problem of blacks in the streets. What are they going to do about it, right?
And so Nixon recommended a preventive detention. Not much commotion about it. Not much commotion. It's aimed at blacks and it's aimed at long hairs. And it says that if you have a record, I've been arrested 18 times. You know, and I faced 2 felonies. I figured I faced 25 years. You know, I mean, if I'm arrested again, I'll just go to jail. That's all. They'll throw the key away, right? You know, and you'll remember this talk and say, wasn't he this or that, right? You won't break me out, will you?
Hell yes. Yes, we will.
Let's bring this. So, you know, preventive detention is primarily aimed against black people, you know? It's aimed against blacks. And, got to do something about it, you know? We got to do something about it. There is right now in America today a war of genocide going on, a conspiracy to eliminate the Black Panther Party by the power structures. There's not about it. I mean, I'm living in the East and I can see it. In every city in the East, leaders of the Black Panther Party are arrested, charged with phony bullshit crimes like conspiracy, you know, to kill this or that, you know, and $100,000 bail.
Yeah.
You know? So what they're doing, you see, is they're using bail, preventive detention, phony charges as an attempt to keep the blacks down. Because, you know, when a guy like Bunchy or a guy like Eldridge makes the scene, it's very frightening to them because they are pictures of a free black man. A free black man walking the streets is a walking conspiracy and an inspiration to other blacks, and it's got to be stopped. They've got to cut it down. They've got to get rid of Eldridge, and they had to kill Bunchy, right? They had to. Because, I mean, the moment that blacks become, have symbols of freedom, the thing spreads like mad, right? And so right now there's a conspiracy to eliminate the Black Panthers, and whites have got to get together. I mean, we got to get together, and we got to bring these campuses down. That's the best way. I mean, the best way we can aid anybody, the best way we can aid me in my Chicago bus and aid the Panthers is by winning the struggle on your own front. I don't believe in like support groups. Don't write letters. Don't sign ads. You know what I mean? Just get involved yourself and fight the man wherever you are. Just fight him right there, right? And there's going to be an alliance in this country between the blacks and the whites, no doubt about it. But it's up to the whites to make that alliance. Bullshit. Don't look to the blacks to make the alliance. The blacks are ready. It's the whites that aren't ready. When the whites are ready to take the risk that blacks are taking, then there'll be an alliance. That's when there'll be an alliance. You got to ask yourself, man. Blacks aren't racist. Whites are racist. Whites come out of a racist society. Blacks don't come out of a racist environment. Whites do. You see? The blacks are ready for an alliance. The moment. I mean, look at the Panthers, for example. They're ready to ally. The Panther Yippie is an example. The Yippie showed Chicago that we're ready to shed our blood in the streets, to fight whoever we're fighting, in Chicago, right? Panthers were ready, to ally with that. The moment you show that you're there, don't worry. They'll be there because revolutionaries need allies. Revolutionaries need allies. And we got a common enemy, and we're in a common situation, and we got to get together. And just want to end with saying that it's kind of a contradiction giving a speech. And I don't know why I do it, but it's fun. And but I want to say that I hope you don't leave and say, "Oh, I like this idea, I like that idea, good idea." Treat it like academically the way you treat, your professor. Bullshit on that. I don't care whether you love me, hate me, agree or disagree. I want you to move and act. That's the only thing that counts. If you don't move, you're on their side. If you move, we're together. That's all there is to it. Thank you. Being total, cultural, and music being key to the revolution. So I want to introduce now the only guy that came to Chicago and was in the streets with the Yippies.
Facciamo il check di una canzone intera, dici.
Chicago.